Going to Gamescom, I was asked to say hi to Denis Dyack, so hi, Denis Dyack.
Hello, hi, how are you?
I'm great, I hope you're fine. You're probably a bit jet lagged coming from...
Just landed today, so, but I'm excited to talk to you, so here I am.
Okay, let's talk games. Most people will know your name from Eternal Darkness games, from Legacy of Kain, but right now you're working on a new project with a slightly weird name.
Deadhaus Sonata.
So first of all, how did that name come to be? Because house is actually spelled like the German house?
Yes. So a lot of people don't know, but we did a lot of research into, when we were doing Legacy of Kain, we did a lot of, I would say, Gothic research, and a lot of Gothic roots are in Germany.
Yeah.
And so I decided when I was creating Deadhaus Sonata, I would use the house as in the German house. And it's really interesting because a lot of people will come up to me and go, why did you spell it that way? What does that mean? I go, that's the German house for spelling there, or the German name for house. And they're like, oh, okay. So I just think it's really relevant to Gothic literature and lore. And I think it puts a unique spin on the actual title, so it stands out for people. So.
Oh yeah, and it's easy to Google.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's a game where you're going to play the creatures that are usually cast as the evil guys.
That's correct. So in Deadhaus Sonata, you play the undead fighting the living. So you're playing vampires, liches, banshees, ghouls, wraiths, you name it, all on the undead side. And Deadhaus Sonata is one of the first houses. We're going to start rolling out other houses as the game progresses. It's free to play, narrative-based, multiplayer, with procedural generation in not only in the levels, but in the storytelling as well.
Okay, procedural generation for storytelling. That sounds complicated.
We're doing some very interesting stuff. That's when I first started talking with Guy, when we started working together. One of the first things he said, hey, I'm really into narrative, and I was like, great, so am I. All of my previous games are known for narrative, so we're going to try to do something really different this time. We're going to try to engage the audience on a different level, because most of the time when you play multiplayer games, there isn't much of a narrative, but in Deadhaus Sonata, there's going to be a strong narrative.
Okay, and you do have gameplay trailers online, but the final game will look different because you're working on the looks, on the art, on everything.
Correct. Everything you're seeing on videos and website is total work in progress, going to be completely redone. That's very early prototype, pre-alpha. It's all going to be thrown out. So it'll be looking much darker, much more realistic. We're using the Amazon Lumberyard engine, actually the whole AWS stack, and the technology is fantastic. And by the time we get around to, getting to 1.0 of the game, it'll look totally different.
Okay, but the general feel of action-based fighting, of a lot of movement. I looked at the vampire who is constantly on the move across the map.
Correct.
That is going to stay like that.
That's the gameplay of the vampire. So, as I was mentioning to you earlier before we sat down and started recording, I'm a huge Cthulhu Wars fan. And asymmetrical gameplay is a big thing for us. And everyone in the office plays Cthulhu Wars because we're big believers in asymmetrical gameplay, and that playing a lot of board games will translate to video games, and tabletop will translate to video games, just like Dungeons and Dragons for story, all of these kind of things. That's where a lot of the procedural generation stuff comes in. But anyway, why I mention that is the vampire plays fast, but there are going to be some characters that are much more strategic, much more slower. Banshees, wraiths will have or I should say the wraith will have a much slower pace compared to, say, the vampire.
Okay, you already mentioned Guy, and I also have to mention the person who told me to say hi to you, which is Till from Dungeon Fog. So you're also kind of part of this Dungeon Fog World Anvil Guys Clanders, How to Be a Great GM channel gang?
Yes, correct. And so we are all started connecting, so we haven't opened it up to the public yet, but we're using World Anvil as one of the tools for our world building.
Okay.
And so I got connected to Guy that way, and as you saw on the stream, he showed me Project Deus, and from there I just looked at the potential, and here's what we think. If you want to look at the future of gaming, I'm a big the medium is the message kind of person. The medium of today's gamers are not only playing the game, but watching people stream and play the game. So imagine if we can make that part of the game, and imagine if we can engage the community. When you look at Project Deus, It allows you to do world creation, world building, and at the same time go all the way down to the level of create the entire world to a specific dungeon. Imagine if we use those tools so the community could create levels in the game for Deadhaus Sonata. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to work with that group to say, okay, they're going to work on the tools, we're going to implement it, so when you make a level on the Deadhaus Sonata site within Project Deus, you'll actually be able to play it in the game Deadhaus Sonata. That's the idea.
Okay, so kind of building the 2D level is going to translate into the game.
The 3D level and the story, everything. Okay. So everything. And so that's why I was mentioning earlier, procedurally generated story is really important for that. So what we want to be able to do is create a world in which gamers can interact on whatever level they want. If they don't want to make any of the stories, they can just play the game. But there are a lot of people out there that want to create interesting narratives and interesting stories and play with their friends, so why not allow them to do that within our universe?
Okay, and you are one of the peak backers of Project Deus, the highest backer of Project Deus. So they are going to make custom assets and maps and things for Deadhaus Sonata?
Correct, yes. So they're going to do the entire world for Deadhaus Sonata, and for anyone who's using Project Deus, they can use those assets to make their own maps as well. So we're really excited about it. I think the project itself is fantastic, as shown by how well the project did. Yeah. But I think these kind of grassroots community development initiatives are what we're looking for our community. So yeah, couldn't be more excited. Till is awesome. Guy is awesome. Janet and Dimitri, all those, they're all fantastic, right? And I watch all your streams. I watch the Salt Marsh streams. I was just watching the last one before I came here, and you guys do fantastic. So it's just really fun. And I think I do hope there's a lot of crossover. The video games today have their own sort of niche market, but if you look at things like, I don't know, Dota. If you look at a game like Dota, all of those archetypes are made by the community, and they became big. So when you look at, say, Dungeons and Dragons and the kind of tabletop games that you guys focus on are big because of the people. So why not combine those two things? And that's what we're trying to do with Deadhaus.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about horror, because the games you've worked on have been horror games, obviously. And we just had a little quick talk before we started recording about your love for Lovecraft. So how has this background influenced your work?
So he is one of the big foundations of horror for me. Lovecraft and his writings have been a huge influence ever since Legacy of Kain, and it snuck in a little bit with Legacy of Kain, where we had some Lovecraftian things really deep. It was mostly a gothic sort of setting, but really deep in there we started going Lovecraftian. Eternal Darkness, which was my next game after Legacy of Kain, was completely Lovecraftian, without the actual hard Lovecraft, where we didn't have we had gods like Xelatoth and Ulyaoth. We didn't have things. We didn't have some of the outer gods like Cthulhu in there, so we created our own mythos, but beyond that it was as pure Lovecraft as you can get. We're quoting Lovecraft all the time. We had a sanity system where you break the fourth wall. If you lose sanity, you couldn't trust the game anymore. And so ever since then, and Lovecraft's kind of cosmic horror intermixing, really science with horror, I think to some extent is still a favorite genre of mine, and Deadhaus Sonata has huge Lovecraftian influences as well, and we're going to have a whole house devoted to that as well, but that's a story for another day.
Do you, apropos story, do you have a favorite Lovecraft story, and why?
Yeah, I would say Into the Mountains of Madness for me is my favorite. Though I believe I've read everything Lovecraft at this point. There are several stories. I just want to make sure I get the name right. Through the Gate of the Silver Key, I think. Am I Through the Gate?
There are two stories. One is the Silver Key, and one is Through the Gate and something.
Through the Gate. So both of those I really liked a lot. I like anything Nyarlathotep related, and I think he's one of the most interesting Lovecraftian beings that was created. I've read a lot of post-Lovecraft stuff too. I guess third generation Lovecraft. But yeah, Into the Mountains of Madness, which I hear they're still making into a movie. I would really be excited to see that. So
everyone's still hoping for Guillermo del Toro to take that on.
So a lot of people don't know this, but he's Canadian. He lives in Toronto, or one of his places in Toronto, and I've bumped into him a few times and talked to him. So we have some mutual friends. So I sat down with him and talked. I didn't bring that up. I should have, but I didn't want to be a total fanboy, right, and say, please make Mountains of Madness.
Next time you see him, you can tell him there's a lot of people who want me to say, please make Mountains of Madness. And then you're not the fanboy, you're just the outlet.
Well, I don't bump into him every day, but next time I do, I promise you I will tell him for sure.
Lots of people are going to be very happy. So, you already hinted at that for Deadhaus Sonata there's going to be one Lovecraftian faction, so there's going to be more than the undead?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so as an example, there'll be Giga House, which is House of the Giants, Dream House, House of the Mind, Xeno House, which is the Lovecraftian house. There's going to be 9 houses all, and plus other minor factions.
Okay. What's your timeline with Deadhaus Sonata? Because you said what we're seeing now is pre-alpha and everything.
Yeah, we're going to have a closed alpha around this time, second or third quarter of next year. It's going to be out there for those who are backing it now. So early founders will be able to get on and play, and I would expect us to get to a 1.0 about a year after that.
Okay. Where do we find everything for the game?
Deadhaussonata.com.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh no, thank you. Really appreciate it. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and I'm going to say hi back to Till.
Sounds good. Hi, Till. Hello.